Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome once again to Syracuse Basketball Postgame. It's presented by Krause Health, and I got to make sure that our audio is working here. Sorry. Sorry, folks. We're just like Syracuse in the second half against Georgetown. A little bit of a misfire there. Okay, we're plugged in. Everybody can hear me okay? Just hop in the comments and let me know if you guys can't hear me or not, because had to reconnect the audio there as we have gone. So, Syracuse is 5-5. Jim Boeheim, first time he's lost 5 non-conference games. And the Orange are in a bit of trouble here. And not to mention, they just lost to a big rival. Never good to lose to Georgetown in any way, shape, or form. And Syracuse lost to Georgetown. Final score in Washington, D.C. at the Capital One Center, 79-75 is the final score. So we thank those of you who have joined me live on the Syracuse Orange Basketball Facebook page. Thanks to those of you watching live on Syracuse Orange Sports on YouTube as well. We do put this on YouTube as well. You can find it on social media, on syracuse.com, plenty of places if you do miss the show live as we are here. And here come the comments hot and heavy. You got me? Okay, good. Thank you, Sarah, for letting me know that audio up and running. We appreciate that. Brian jumping in. Rebounds dropped off from ahead to even at half to -7 for the game. Michelle noting that it was a sad ending, terrible officiating in that game. Yeah, there was one call there in the second half. Jimmy Boeheim got mugged going up to the basket, and they didn't call it. But really, you got to go beyond that for Syracuse. You got to overcome some bad calls. And it was really a tale of two halves. I mean, Syracuse went on a big run to end the first half. They're up 44-34 at halftime. Georgetown bounces back to start the second half. They score the first 6 points. They ultimately outscore Syracuse in the second half, 45-31. And boy, Amanu Muhammad just tore Syracuse apart. 23 points, 13 rebounds. We'll go over some numbers as we go here shortly, but Georgetown made a big adjustment in the second half. And what ironic that this would be the guy in charge of doing it. Patrick Ewing, one of the great centers in the history of basketball, goes without a center. So Muhammad was breaking the Syracuse zone, whatever zone it was, 2-3, 1-1-3, 1-3-1, however you want to label it here. And also big contribution from Colin Holloway from Georgetown off the bench. And Patrick Ewing basically goes without a center and attacks the zone, and Syracuse could just not keep pace. So let me highlight a few more of your comments, then we'll dive in on some numbers here because, Syracuse lost hold of this one in the second half. Vince says the commentators made a big point of saying the Orange had the worst three-point defense in basketball. Bad zone this year, and coach has got to deal with this. Michael with a valid question here. Great bench play in the first half. So what do? Don't play the bench in the second half. Boeheim falls into these habits of just letting his 5 ride. They got big contributions off the bench. Frank Anselm was terrific in the first half, getting to the basket. Benny Williams had a couple of nice plays. Symir Torrance getting to the hoop. I think they had 10 bench points in the first half. And then they just ride and die in the second half with these starters. And there were clearly times these guys were gassed. They needed help off the bench. And I can understand you want your big players in the key moments down the stretch. But even with 9, 10, 11 minutes to go, you could just see Georgetown had the crowd. Plenty of Syracuse fans there, but had the crowd, had the momentum, had the burst. And Syracuse just needed to go to the bench. Jesse Edwards had 4 fouls at one point. You know, maybe Jim just doesn't trust his young guys in there in key spots, but it was a close game, came down to the end, but no bench play in the second half. I was really wondering about that myself. Look, another big thing is, you know what, Dwayne, you noted here, the Jersey jinx strikes again. Those script uniforms look great, but my unofficial tally on that, and big shout out to my guy, Eric the Orange on Twitter, who looked this up for me. Syracuse is now 3-9. I believe since, I want to say since they played, remember they were number 1 in the country, lost to Boston College in those script uniforms a few years back. I think it was 2014. I think they're now 3-9 in those script jerseys. And, you know, people will say it's not the jerseys, it's the people in the jerseys, but the cursive, how can we put this? The cursive curse has struck again for Syracuse in that 2-3 zone. Antonio says Orange score 2, the opponents score 3. Can't disagree with that. Yeah, cursive the cursive, right, Brian? There you go. Rob says, I'm going to pigtail a comment you made the other night. There was a stretch against Villanova in the first half where Syracuse went cold when they could have built a solid lead. They also went cold to start the second half when Georgetown started to get rolling, and 11 for 21 from the foul line. Cue it is right there. Uncle Brent, free throws matter, kids. Free throws matter, kids. Just for you, Rob. There you go. Yeah, there's a couple of stats here for Syracuse you just can't have. So let's dive into some numbers. You guys keep chatting in the chat there, and we'll come back to it. These two teams actually shot pretty even. Georgetown was 25 of 55. That's 45%. Syracuse, and appropriate for the Orange, 44%, 30 of 68, where Georgetown got the edge. And again, both teams shoot the same amount of threes. This has happened a couple of times to Syracuse this year. Georgetown, 11 of 26 from three-point range. The Orange, 8 of 26 from three-point range. And the big thing there is not only did Buddy Boeheim miss a bunch from three-point range, he was 3 of 7. Cole Swider got a bunch of good looks, and they weren't dropping for Syracuse in this game. Swider, 3 of 10 from three-point range. He does end up with 12 points. Swider, typically a good rebounder for Syracuse. He had 7 rebounds, had 6 assists. You know, Swider will always find a way to contribute if he's not scoring, but Syracuse needed him to score in this game. They needed him to hit those threes. He didn't. So Buddy actually leads Syracuse with 17 points. Jesse Edwards, Cole Swider with 12. Joe Girard, I think, had a pretty nice game. I think there were some plays in the second half he'd like back. He shot 2 of 8 from three-point range, but had the drive at the end. And boy, we're a few minutes into the show. We haven't even mentioned this yet. Joe drives, misses the free throw. I mean, Joe Girard is 89% free throw shooter at this point. The fact that he missed that free throw is not as surprising as it would seem. Joe's missed some big free throws in his day, even though he's kind of noted as being a good free throw shooter, both statistically and just by reputation. But that one certainly hurt. Jimmy Boeheim finished with 10 on the day. We mentioned the bench getting in the first half, but not much in the second half. Georgetown beat the Orange on the boards 38-31. This was a mark Syracuse actually was pretty even with Georgetown, or led for a big part of the game till the Hoyas took over there in the second half. You know where Syracuse was great in this game? Points in the paint. We mentioned Georgetown went small and attacked the zone and, got away from the big lineup. Syracuse took advantage of that. 42-26. They outscored Georgetown in the paint, which, that's huge for Syracuse if they can do that, particularly if they're not hitting from the outside. But you also got to stop Georgetown. Both teams dished out 20 assists in this game. So, look, there was a lot of things that were even, but Georgetown just hit a few more threes, a few more possessions, as Rob noted there, when Syracuse got into a little bit of a drought, the burst at the start of the first half. And look, folks, it was just another typical Syracuse-Georgetown game. For those that say, why do they still play this game? This is why. Since they started playing again in 2015, after Syracuse exited the Big East, no game has been decided by more than 10 points in this series. It's a back and forth, great rivalry, intense, throw the records out kind of thing. And neither team came in with a good record anyway in this game. But if you're just, Johnny college basketball fan watching on a Saturday, you were certainly entertained by this game. That's why they play. But let's look where Syracuse is at here, folks. They're 5-5. They have 3 bad non-conference losses on the resume now. VCU, Colgate, Georgetown. All those teams have really high rankings in the net. Georgetown's net is over 200. This is going to sting. So what Syracuse is doing is digging itself a hole that they've got to make up for in ACC play. I think it'd be foolhardy to say anything definitive at this point on December 11th, because Syracuse has proven us wrong time and again. But that defensive inefficiency they have is glaring. Georgetown did an excellent job attacking the zone, overloading the zone, going small. Muhammad is a great player. I mean, I got to give him props. He's a freshman for Georgetown. He's going to be exciting to watch the next few years. Syracuse just doesn't have a strong defensive presence. There wasn't enough stops. They were scoring and keeping pace as best they could, even with some of those missed threes and some of the things we mentioned there. But you got to make stops on defense. And Syracuse just simply doesn't make any stops on defense. It's a bad defensive team, whether it's 1-1-3, 1-3-1, and some of those adjustments had worked and they had done enough defensively. But even in the games they're winning, they're holding on, right? Indiana, 2-point game in double overtime. Florida State, 3-point game. The Seminoles have a shot at the end. This is just what Syracuse is going to do. And look, my concern, and I said it before, this stretch really hit, and Syracuse just went through a 7-game stretch where they only played 1 game at home and a lot of close games, a lot of intense games, 3 games in 3 days in the battle for Atlantis. My concern was this team's just going to run out of gas. And to play this intense, all these close games, and the rate at which they have to play this early in the season, that's concerning. I mean, there's a lot of basketball to go here, folks. In the ACC, while the ACC is a little more open than usual this year, let's be honest, not an easy league. And if you don't play defense and you're inconsistent rebounding and you're scoring, some nights it's there, some nights it's not. I mean, at the very least, as we've seen here, folks, it is going to be an adventure for this team. As Brian notes here, will this be Boeheim's first losing season? Look, it's in play. They're 5-5 right now, and the way they kind of back and forth these things, I think at the very least it's a conversation right now. Let's go through some more of your comments. Always appreciate you guys coming by. Gabe says Benny showed his upside, and that upside could have helped in the second half, but 0 minutes. He might not transfer, but he could get frustrated. Yeah, it should be noted, Gabe. I'm glad you brought that up. Benny did say in a radio interview this week that he's not going to transfer. He's going to stick it out. He believes in the coaches. So that's good. But like you said, doesn't really mean he's not going to get frustrated as they go along here. Greg says this is the worst defense and our shooting needs to be better. JL says can't miss the threes, but the Cuse will bounce back. Having some faith that the Orange is going to overcome this. Ryan says more Benny and Symir, less Swider. All right, let's talk about that for a minute, because Frank Anselm came in too, showed some presence around the hoop, great moves, confidence, attacking the basket, couple of dunks, gets to the free throw line in the first half. What more can you ask for? Because Syracuse had no offensive pop off the bench. Symir Torrance comes in, right? Look, Joe was playing well. I don't have any complaints about Joe Girard in the first half of this game. I think he panicked a little bit in the second half, and he feels like he's, kind of has to take over as opposed to running the team. And there's a difference there. Taking over a game offensively and running an offense, there's a difference there, right? And Joe just has that scorer's mentality, and sometimes I think it can lead him astray. But look, he had the big play at the end, just didn't make the free throw, so it all balances out. But look, Symir gets to the basket, gives Syracuse a little pop off the bench. Benny Williams finally gets in the paint, makes a couple of plays, comfortable around the basket, playing before his, he's from that area, right? Playing before a lot of friends and family. And then they don't go to the bench at all in the second half. I don't understand that. I get it in the last, 3-4 minutes of the game. You count on your big players. It's your starters that are going to win you those games. I completely understand that. But when you see some of these guys lagging, when you see Jesse Edwards get to 4 fouls, when you say, you know what, even if you keep Jesse in and he gets a 5th foul, you're comfortable that Frank can come in and contribute, right? But that bewildered me, because it's not like they were cold and you had to go to the bench because they were in foul trouble or something like that. They played well in the first half of this game. And look, this defense, we've seen this a time or two this year, guys, where they've got whatever the lead is and they just can't hold on to it. You need your offense to back you up there, but they can't make any stops. Especially Georgetown made a simple adjustment. No center, went small, overloaded the zone, attacked. The Orange can't stop it. I mean, I didn't really label this, nor did anybody label this. I'm trying to think of the right way to phrase this. Like, we knew this was kind of a bad defensive team to start with, but they had made some improvements. They were getting to the corners better. The 1-1-3 look at least gave opposing teams something else to think about. But today it feels like a lot of that progress takes a big step back in this one. Steven, my man, Steven North Syracuse says, we don't have 50-50 balls. They have 20-80. Tight cheeks get loose balls. There you go. Matt says, this team is a microcosm of the last 5 years. One of those long comments. I'm hiding behind it here. Where'd Brent go? They are predictable on offense and defense. Teams as bad as Georgetown are too good to not add wrinkles. Syracuse can't stem the tide on defense. Continuing to play the same old defense. They can't stop momentum. Once they lose momentum, they play one-on-one ball. This year especially, they just don't have those horses. Look, Matt, that's a good point. This team doesn't have a lot of guys that can beat people off the dribble and do that one-on-one play. They're sticking with old philosophies. Buddy can beat people off the dribble sometimes. Joe can attack the basket at times when he's got a step. Jimmy can make some moves here and there, but typically it's not a very athletic team, and they don't have a lot of guys that can beat people off the dribble. So when teams start to get back in it, as Steve brought up there, some tight cheeks start happening, they can't make any stops, right? And when you're countering on the offensive side, they're depending so much on threes. They're depending so much on – they did make some nice passes in this game. We mentioned they had 20 assists. They did move the ball better. I'll give them credit for that. But there's just something about the back and forth mentality of this team and how you're just holding on for dear life. in all these games. We mentioned some and others that we didn't, that typical Syracuse zone, I shouldn't say typical, but a Syracuse zone that can shut people down and be a factor just is not. And again, no matter how you want to label that zone, no matter what numbers it is, as Jeff says, this team needs a lot of work in the second half. Appreciate Al checking in, saying, how many poor second half showings do we need to make some change? Either Boeheim's not making the right adjustments, players are losing focus. JG3 clearly affected. And Simir, you guys can read it here. Jimmy B goes cold late in the second half again. Benny not bad. Can't had to give Jimmy a blow off the bench. Plus, Benny's play at the rim was one of the most athletic I've seen in years. He earned more time today. Yeah, Benny, slowly but surely, I think, is earning some more time out there. He has had some struggles, though. I mean, honestly, he was out of position in the Indiana game. Defense is still overwhelming to him. He's still getting in the flow of the game, but he looked pretty good today. Like one of those games where none of those things were a problem. So, look, you can't shut off any potential answers if you're Syracuse, if they lie on the bench at this point. If Benny gets to that point, Frank certainly showed that he can come in and play some big boy basketball. Then, maybe we'll see that go a little bit. But yeah, Boeheim's certainly apt to stick to some habits of the past as well. Michael says Muhammad, a freshman, ranked equal to what Benny was, but Muhammad plays, right? Muhammad's been playing well all year, to be fair. He has popped. Some guys are just more ready than others. But you can make the argument what makes those players better, what makes them ready, if you will, put them on the court and let them play. Benny has made some bad mistakes, but name me a freshman that doesn't at this point. So that is going to be a real interesting balance going forward. Chris says this team is trending the wrong way. First loss to Colgate, 5 out of conference losses. Is the streak of non-losing seasons up next? A lot of people asking that question about this team. Let me look up that number while we're yakking about it here, just so we got that right. Let's see. So Syracuse came into this game 5-4. The 4 non-conference losses are just one. Here it is, just one shy of the most in Jim Boeheim's 46-year coaching tenure. So yeah, they did match that today with 5 non-conference losses. So you got Lehigh next. Syracuse can go in the lab for a week. It's finals week next week as well. Lehigh's a terrible team, so I would imagine they get that win. You get Cornell on December 21st. And then guess what? It's ACC time. Now, I think the early part of the Syracuse schedule in the ACC is actually manageable. They start with Georgia Tech, Virginia on New Year's Day. Virginia is not as good as usual. They're 6-4 right now. They lost to, I think it was James Madison or somebody like that this week. And I'll pull it up while we're talking about it here, but a lot of those ACC games that were early in the slate, I was looking at it a little earlier today, are manageable. But as we're saying here, Syracuse has to continue to make some improvements in some key areas, particularly on defense, or all these games become toss-ups. And what happens is when all your games are toss-ups, they're all stressful games, right? Games that you should control become stressful games. I would put this game in this category, rivalry aside, right? So Lehigh, Cornell, week off, December 29th, Georgia Tech, Virginia, at Miami. That's certainly a game Syracuse can win. Wake Forest, it's certainly a game I think Syracuse can win. Pitt is terrible this year. That's at home. January 11th starts a 3-game stretch where Syracuse plays 3 in a row at home. Pitt, the rematch with Florida State on January 15th, and then Clemson on the 18th. And then January 22nd, that's your first game at Duke, which, frankly, Syracuse is going to have a real hard time beating Duke this year at home, otherwise on the road. I don't know if you guys saw some of those ticket prices for the Syracuse-Duke game, by the way. Yowza. Oh, woo. I think you might have to sell a kidney to go to that game if you're asking Santa Claus for those tickets. But that's another topic for a different day. So bottom line, you can't lose to VCU, Colgate, and Georgetown. Maybe one of those teams, right? But now you got 3 bad losses on your resume, and it just makes so much for Syracuse to make up for, I should say, in ACC play at this point. Chris says Syracuse's best teams always have a strong facilitating point guard. It showed when Joe was facilitating in the first half. Chris, that's a great point. As James notes, isn't there the question, though, that even if they rack up wins, if they're not quality wins, does it matter if the key ones are all lost? It's a fair point, James. And Villanova is a quality loss, if you will. That's not going to hurt Syracuse at all, losing to a top 5 team, but balance that with 3 bad losses. And then they've got to make up big ground in the ACC. And they're really, here we go again, stressing themselves once again in the vein of the NCAA tournament conversation. But to go back to Joe Girard, first half, he's facilitating, taking what's there, good shots. Second half, Georgetown gets back in it. And what Joe tends to do is he becomes offensive Joe. He feels like he's got to take over the game as opposed to continuing to do what he does, and that's distribute the ball, right? We brought up Buddy Boeheim, and look, he had 17 points. He led this team in scoring today, but 7 of 18 from the field, 3 of 7 from three-point range. Today was a real mix of what we've seen with Buddy lately. Look, Florida State just shut him down. Come hell or high water, he wasn't getting the ball. Villanova did give him some looks as much as they harassed him on defense. He didn't hit those in that game. He had plenty of good looks in this game. He got open in this game. Georgetown's just not on the level of those two teams defensively. He led the team in scoring. He made some big plays in the second half. He made some really nice passes. I don't think this was certainly as bad of a game as he's played the last two, where he only had 6 points, 12 points combined against Florida State and Villanova. But I wouldn't call it a good game from Buddy either, right? There's just too many open shots. He didn't get there. And I mean, you got to give him credit for kind of fighting and scratching and clawing, getting 17 points any way he could. He's driving in, he's kissing, shots off the glass, fighting inside. But man, he has got to work for everything he's got. That is going to be something to continue to watch for this team because nothing's coming easy. Jim Boeheim said it on his radio show this week. He's not going to have an easy shot the rest of his really his career, because this is his last year at Syracuse, because everybody's coming at him with everything they got, including the kitchen sink, right? Joe notes JG3 should not play the minutes he plays, period. Too much bad, not enough good to justify his minutes. I don't know if I agree with that, Joe. I mean, listen, Symir's a great distributor, but he's not as talented an offensive player as Joe. That last play demonstrates what Joe can do. You need a three-point threat out there in a tight game like this. Symir's not a three-point threat. It's not to say Symir can't come in and spell him a little bit, but nobody else has what Joe can do, the complete package there. It can be frustrating. I get it, but that's what they have. That's their guy. That's what they got to ride with. They don't have a pure point guard right now that can also score. And when a team can't make stops on defense, you got to have a scorer out there. So I certainly understand where some of the frustration comes from, but look, Joe's shooting over 50% from 3-point range. I think relative, he's been pretty good this year. Had a great first half, as we noted. If he was just chucking the ball all over the place and looked lost out there, that'd be one thing. You'd have to put Symir in and kind of sacrifice that offense for ball distribution. That's on Joe. He's got to know that. He's got to know when to take what the defense gives him versus distribute the ball. And in the tight situations, he feels like he's got to take over more, and that's just instinctual. But look, he's a veteran player now. This, as Jim Boeheim would tell him, this isn't Glens Falls anymore. You don't have to take over the game. You got a few other guys out there that you can distribute the ball to. But to be fair, they did that to Cole Swider, and Cole wasn't hitting his shots in this game. 3 of 10 from 3-point range. That's why he's out there. Again, he had 5 assists. He gets to the boards. He does other things out there. But this is that game you needed Cole to be like 6 of 10 from 3-point range, not 3 of 10. And that's the difference. Steven brings up a good point. Buddy, never gets to the foul line. There were a couple of games he got to the foul line earlier this year. One time, I can't remember what game it was off the top of my head, but he got to the free throw line 10 times just by driving in the paint. But for a guy that gets in the paint as much as he does, he doesn't get to the foul line as much. And look, this is nowhere near the top of my list in terms of reasons Syracuse lost this game. You got to admit the officiating in this one. If you're going to let him play, but let him play on both ends. That one play in the second half, Jimmy Boeheim goes up. There is nothing but contact. No one even touched the ball. And no call, right? Jimmy mouths it. You can clearly see it on the TV broadcast. Bill Raftery on the call today. That was always fun when he's calling the game, right? You can see Jimmy mouth, "Are you serious?" Right? So not the best officiating crew. Not that I think it cost Syracuse, but it is a point you brought up, Steve, about no free throws there. And you know, if you're gonna let him play on both ends. There were some calls that certainly were very frustrating in this game at this point. David says he does rebound, but nothing off the bounce. There it is. Elena says Cole's been amazing so far. I don't know if I'd go amazing, but he certainly has contributed to this team. he's earning his minutes out there. That's for sure. Brian says the defense is the problem until this team digs in on D, and the glass will continue with the same results. The rebounding, look, Syracuse did what it had to do rebounding wise. They got the ball inside, a lot of scoring in the paint. You got to expect Syracuse to either keep the rebounding even or keep it manageable. And they did in this game. And let me jump in and look at the offensive rebounds, because that's what's really been the bugaboo for Syracuse as of late. Yeah, Syracuse, 9 offensive rebounds to Georgetown's 8. So they held that in check. Georgetown did out-rebound Syracuse on the defensive end, 30-22. Let me see if I can find the second half rebounding numbers, because I would imagine Georgetown was pretty dominant there. Yep, Georgetown out-rebounded Syracuse, if my numbers are right here, in the second half, 22-12 overall. And don't know, I'm just looking at my score sheet here, guys. I don't know if I could see the first half numbers, but 22-12 in the second half. Yeah, that's just more possessions and more chances for Georgetown to take this one at this point. Jack with a football reference. No adjustments made, just like Babers. Georgetown made a big adjustment, that's for sure. Taking that center out and attacking the zone the way that they did. And Zach, we'll give you the walk-off comment. Just waiting for the day Boeheim shocks us all and we start playing man-to-man defense. You'll be waiting a very long time for that to happen, that's for sure. So, well, what do you say we end it there for today, guys? Yeah, this one stings. And now Syracuse has to go into the lab for a week and get some practice time in, get the finals going, take a deep breath, 2 more non-conference games, and then ACC play begins. So I believe the next time we'll be with you here on Postgame is for, I think we're taking the next couple of games off here for Postgame, guys. Unless the people demand it, and we'll be here for it. You know what? I think we are going to pop in after the Cornell game. I'm not sure if we'll be doing post game after the Lehigh game next Saturday, but I believe we'll be popping in. Now, that's late because Syracuse plays Cornell at 9 o'clock on Tuesday, the 21st. So I think we're going to pop in and do a post game after that and kind of set up Syracuse for ACC play there. So no post game next Saturday, December the 18th. But I think we'll be here December the 21st after the Cornell game, as Syracuse will have wrapped up its non-conference schedule at that point. But as always, appreciate you guys coming by. The show airs live after Syracuse basketball games, as we just noted. But if you missed it, we'll put up the YouTube clip on SYR Basketball and our Twitter feed. It archives automatically if you're watching on Facebook, and you can find it in my recap on syracuse.com as well. It's all presented by Krause Health. I hope you guys have a great week. Thanks for coming by and chatting after the show as always, and we'll see if the Orange can get back on track here. But now at 5-5, ooh, baby, they've got a lot of work to do to make up for yet another bad loss here to the Georgetown Hoyas. First 5 losses in non-conference play for Jim Boeheim, and could Syracuse stay on this pace? They could really be in a conversation of having a losing season if they don't make up for it here with ACC play set to begin in just a couple of weeks. All right. Have a great rest of your weekend, everybody. This has been Syracuse Basketball.